In 1977, I went to a summer camp called Camp Ernst that my parents enrolled me in. Luckily, it was with my best friend Keith, so I wouldn't be there alone. The camp lasted for 2 weeks and had the kind of atmosphere you'd expect to see in old summer camp horror movies like Sleepaway Camp. There were 2 large cabins where girls and boys slept, respectively. There was also a large lodge-like building with an activities center, dining hall, and other amenities, as well as several smaller buildings scattered throughout the camp. The place seemed peaceful and fun during the day, but at night, a sinister atmosphere took over. There were rumors that the camp was haunted by a former staff member who had died in a mysterious accident. Some believed he had committed suicide. Keith and I stayed up later than all the other kids because we wanted to play our Nintendo DS together. It was getting late into the night, past 2 a.m., and we were still playing together when the cabin door opened. We quickly hid our DS consoles under our pillows and pretended to be asleep. Footsteps moved around the room, from Keith's bed to mine. Then, the footsteps stopped at my bed, and for a brief moment, I felt the gentle sensation of someone breathing on my neck. Then, the footsteps moved away from my bed and back towards the door before closing it. I looked at Keith and said it was creepy, especially because whoever it was had been breathing on my neck. We went back to playing our DS consoles when I received a text message on my phone that said, "Why are you two still awake?" Those of us with phones had received a list of phone numbers of camp counselors we should call if something happened. But that number didn't belong to any of the counselors, at least not that I knew of. I texted back asking who it was, but I didn't get a response. It had to be a counselor, or at least we thought it was. So, we went back to playing our DS consoles with the screen brightness minimized. We heard the back door of the cabin open, looked at each other, and once again hid our DS consoles under the pillows. We didn't hear any more footsteps, but suddenly my phone vibrated. There was another text message from the same number that said, "It's Counselor Tony. Come outside, to the back of the cabin. I have something to tell you." I told Keith, and he thought it sounded very suspicious. So, we both wondered if the person called Tony was the one who had just opened the back door. I got out of bed and took a few steps towards the center of the room, from where I could see the hallway to the back door. There was no one in sight, so I walked a little further down the hallway to the cabin's back screen door. I noticed that there was a small section of the wall that was recessed, and in that small opening, someone was hiding. I approached a little closer and realized it wasn't a camp counselor, but rather a man with a very sinister-looking camp uniform, resembling the staff member who had died many years ago in that very place. I was so scared that I ran back to my bed, screaming for help, waking everyone up. It was at that moment that I heard the back door slam shut. A camp counselor rushed in through the front door, and I told everyone what had just happened. The counselors immediately called the police and searched the entire camp for someone matching the description I gave, but as it was a large area surrounded by forests, it would be impossible to find anyone. I still wonder how that man got my phone number. My best guess would be that he somehow found a list of phone numbers that the counselors had made, but how did he know who I was? I still dream about that experience from time to time, and it's something I'll never forget. After the incident, the camp counselors made sure all campers were safe and that camp security was reinforced. But I never wanted to go back to that place, not even for a visit. I always had the feeling that man was still out there, watching me, waiting for another chance to get me. I always hated camping, but it was the only job I could get at that time. I worked at a campsite as a night watchman, from 0 o'clock to 8 in the morning every night. The campsite was in an isolated region, far from the city, and only received guests on weekends. During the week, I was the only human being in that place, surrounded by trees, animals, and silence. My job was simple. Stay in the reception cabin, answer the phone, check the security cameras, and make a round through the campsite every 2 hours. It wasn't that bad, I took my PS2 and played most of the night. Sometimes I received a call from a potential customer or from my boss, but they were rare. Most nights were quiet and monotonous. In my first week there, the other guy from the third shift, who was leaving, told me about a payphone a few meters from the cabin where I worked. He said the phone rang every night at 4:17 in the morning, just once. It was probably just an automatic test, he guessed. He never answered to make sure. He said it was better for me to ignore it, because if I answered, I could hear things I didn't want to. He didn't explain what he meant by that, but I saw the fear in his eyes. He handed me the keys, wished me good luck, and ran away. I spent a few months on that job. It was summer, so most nights I kept the windows closed and the air conditioning on. I couldn't hear the phone ring, but I knew it rang. I saw the payphone glow in the darkness, like a red eye watching me. I felt a shiver down my spine every time I looked at it, but I tried to ignore it. In the middle of August, the air conditioner broke and I had to leave the windows open at night. That's when I heard the phone ring for the first time. The ring was loud and shrill, as if the payphone was full of water. It echoed through the night, cutting the silence. It rang once, and then stopped. I felt a morbid curiosity to know who was calling and why. One night, I had the courage to go answer. I set the alarm for 4:15 and waited for the phone to ring. I grabbed a flashlight and a knife, just in case. I left the cabin and walked to the payphone, which was next to a tree. I looked around, but saw no one. Only the darkness and the shadows. When the clock struck 4:17, the phone rang. I answered, but heard no sound, just silence as if someone was on the other side of the line, but didn't answer. I said hello a few times and hung up. I did this every night for a week, with the same results. I didn't care anymore, and let it go. Maybe it was just an automatic test, or a bad joke. After that, about a month later, in the first week of October, I decided to answer the phone again. I set the alarm, and when the time came, I answered. I repeated hello several times on the phone, and then heard something like someone breathing through clenched teeth. The voice I heard was hoarse and sounded like it had gargled with stones. He said my name, my full name. It was a voice I had never heard. My voice got stuck in my throat and I hung up. I put some coins in the payphone and dialed 69 to check the number. The call came from California. I lived in Indiana. I was paralyzed with fear. Who was that person? How did he know my name? How did he get my number? I looked at the payphone, waiting for it to ring again, but it was silent. I ran back to the cabin, locked the door, and called my boss. He answered, sleepy and annoyed. I told him what had happened, hoping he would give me a logical explanation. But he was silent for a few seconds, and then said, with a trembling voice, "Did you answer the phone?" "Yes, I did." "Why?" "You shouldn't have answered. You should never have answered." "What are you talking about? Who calls that payphone?" "I don't know. But I know what he wants." "What does he want?" "He wants you." I felt a fear run through my body. I asked my boss how he knew that, but he hung up. I tried to call again, but it was busy. I looked at the security cameras, but they were all turned off. I looked out the window and saw a shadow moving toward the cabin. I grabbed the knife and prepared to defend myself. I heard the door being broken down, and then I saw his face. He was a scary man, who was about the same height as me. He had gray and tangled hair, a dirty and long beard, and yellow eyes. He wore torn and dirty clothes, and held a rusty knife in his hand. He smiled at me with a macabre smile and said he was waiting for me. He lunged at me, and I tried to defend myself, but he was stronger and faster. He hit me with the knife, but I managed to dodge in time. He knocked me to the ground and leaned over me. He touched his mouth to my ear and whispered, "You are mine now." I screamed, but no one heard me. He tried to stab me again, but I kicked his face hard. He fell back, and I took the opportunity to get up. I ran out of the cabin toward my car. I grabbed the keys, got in the car, and started it. He got up and ran after me, but I was already far away. I drove as fast as I could without looking back. I called the police and told them everything that had happened. They said they would send a patrol car to the campsite and that I should go to a safe place. That man was never found or seen in that place. I never went back to that place, not even to get my things. I quit my job and moved to another state. I never knew who that man was or what he wanted from me. I never answered a payphone in my life. I learned the lesson: never answer a phone that is not yours. You never know who might be on the other side of the line.
I always liked to camp in the forest with my friends, in a forest that seemed magical and peaceful. It was 50 kilometers from my city. There, we forgot about the problems of life and escaped from the routine. It was good to breathe fresh air and enjoy nature. But after what happened last time, I never want to go back there. It all started as a normal trip. We were 5: me, Pedro, Anna, Lucas, and Carol. We took our tents, backpacks, flashlights, and food, and went there. Pedro knew there much more than I did. It was near a lake. We arrived there in the late afternoon and set up our camp. We made a fire, roasted marshmallows, told stories, and laughed a lot. Everything was perfect, until Lucas decided to tell a legend about the forest. He said that a long time ago in 1883, a group of hunters went after a big bear that lived there. They chased him to a cave where they cornered him and shot him. But the bear did not die. He was badly injured. He became furious and attacked the hunters, killing them all. Since then, the spirit of the vengeful bear haunts the forest, looking for more victims. I thought it was just a story to scare us, but Anna and Carol were afraid. They asked Lucas to stop talking about it, but he continued. He said that the bear always appeared at night, when the moon was full. He roared loudly to lure people out of their tents, and then he dragged them to his cave where he devoured them alive. I looked at the sky and saw that the moon was full. I felt a shiver but tried not to show it. I told Lucas that he was a liar and that he was making it all up. He denied it and said it was true. He said he had seen the bear once when he was a child. He said he was camping with his father when he heard a terrible roar. He came out of the tent and saw the bear, huge and hairy, with red eyes and sharp claws. He said that the bear looked at him and growled, showing his teeth. He was paralyzed with fear until his father appeared and pulled him into the tent. He said that the bear scratched the tent, trying to get in, but that his father managed to scare him away with a shot. He never forgot that day. I did not know if he was serious or if he was joking, but I saw that he was shaking and that he had tears in his eyes. I felt sorry for him and said that he must have imagined everything. I said that there was no ghost bear, that it was just a legend. I said that he could be calm, that we were together, and that nothing would happen to us. He thanked me and calmed down a little, but I realized that he was still nervous. He kept looking around as if he expected to see the bear at any moment. I tried to change the subject, but the mood was already ruined. Anna and Carol said they were tired and that they were going to sleep. Pedro agreed and said it was better for us to do the same. The next day we would explore the forest and have fun. He said that we had nothing to fear, that it was just a story. I agreed and went to my tent. Lucas went to his, which was next to mine. I lay down in my sleeping bag and tried to relax, but I could not sleep. I kept thinking about Lucas's story and the bear. I wondered if it was true or not. I wondered if he was out there watching us. I wondered if he would attack us. I heard a noise. It sounded like a branch breaking. I was startled and sat up. I looked at the window of the tent and saw that it was dark. I saw nothing. I grabbed my flashlight and turned it on. I lit up the window and saw the forest. I saw nothing strange. I breathed a sigh of relief and thought it must be some animal. I turned off the flashlight and lay down again. I heard a roar. It sounded like the roar of a bear. I was very scared and got up. I looked at the window of the tent and saw that it was dark. I grabbed my flashlight and turned it on. I lit up the window and saw the bear. He was huge and hairy. With red eyes, he looked at me and growled, showing his teeth. He was the bear from Lucas's story. He was real. I screamed in terror and ran out of the tent. I ran to the fire where my friends were. They had also heard the roar and had come out of their tents. They had also seen the bear and were terrified. They saw me and called me. They told me to join them, that we would protect ourselves. They told me not to look back, that the bear was coming. I looked back. I saw the bear running after us. He was very fast and strong. He was almost catching us. He was about to get me. I stumbled on a stone and fell into a deep hole, which looked like an old abandoned mine. The bear tried to reach me, but the hole was too narrow for him to enter. He stayed outside, growling and scratching the ground. My friends managed to get to the car, which was parked a few meters away. They turned on the engine and honked, trying to get the bear's attention and give me a chance to escape. I was down there, alone and very scared. I didn't know how I was going to get out of that hole without being killed by the bear. I looked around, looking for some way out, but I only saw darkness and dust. My friends kept making a lot of noise with the car. That distracted the bear for a few moments. I took that opportunity and got out of the hole, using a rope that was hanging on the wall. I climbed up with difficulty, feeling my hands bleed. I reached the surface and started running with all my strength, without looking back. Luckily, there was a road nearby and I heard a truck noise coming in my direction. I didn't waste time and stood in the middle of the road, waving and shouting for help. Luckily, the truck driver saw me in time and braked, avoiding running me over. He opened the door and asked me what was going on. I was desperate and asked for help, telling him about the bear that was hunting me. He invited me to get in the truck, and I accepted without hesitation. He sped up and left, leaving the bear behind. I breathed a sigh of relief and thanked the truck driver. He told me he was going to the nearest town and that he would take me there. I agreed and settled in the seat. I looked out the window and saw the full moon lighting up the night. I thought I had almost died that night.